Hi, my name is Robin Wong. I'm a photographer based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. In this video, I want to explore the mistakes and misunderstandings that common beginners do when it comes to photography lenses. Let's do this! This is a continuation from my previous video about tips on using Olympus lenses. I'll put the link to the video up here. Please check it out if you have not done so. However, this sharing is not specific to Olympus. It is applicable to any brands, any camera systems out there. If you are new to photography, there is plenty to learn. It can be overwhelming. A lot of these mistakes and misunderstandings I've observed happened to many people over the years. I hope that I'm compiling this in one place. This can help you to learn more about photography, especially lenses, and help you to get rid of some confusion and maybe clarify on certain things about lenses and how they work. Number one, telephoto lens is not macro lens. A lot of people ask me, hey Robin, you're doing some macro photography work, you're using the Olympus 60mm macro. Why can't I use the 40-150 telephoto or the 75-300 to do macro photography? These telephoto lenses are really long. In fact, the 150mm end or the 300mm end is so much longer than 60mm. Surely it can go closer and get some macro shots as well. While a lot of telephoto lenses allows you to do some really good close-up, especially Olympus telephoto zoom lenses, but telephoto lenses are not macro lenses. A macro lens is a macro lens, a telephoto lens is a telephoto lens. Both lenses are designed for different purposes. A true macro lens allows you to go close to the subject, very, very close, and magnify the tiny little creature to fill up the entire frame. A macro lens allows you to achieve high magnification, which a telephoto lens may not be able to do. A telephoto lens is simply a long lens with a long focal length. You're shooting subjects that's far away. For example, a bird on a tree branch. You can't climb the tree to shoot the bird. So you're shooting from a distance. A really long lens, say 75-300 or 100-400, allows you to bring the bird much closer to you. But the bird is still really large compared to a tiny insect, say a grasshopper, right? So a macro lens to achieve high magnification. Telephoto lens can do very good close-up, but not as good as a macro lens. I hope that clears up some confusion. If you want to do macro, of course go for macro lenses. Don't expect telephoto lenses to be able to achieve the same magnification. Mistake number two, macro lens for food photography. I've done many workshops for food photography over the years, and many people have asked, do I need macro lens for food photography? No, you don't need macro lens, because when we are shooting food photography, we want to see the entire plate, we want to see the entire sandwich, we want to see a lot of details of the food, right? So you don't just magnify that tiny little grain of rice and fill up the entire frame. You don't need that much magnification when you're shooting food photography. I understand the confusion. A lot of people misunderstood that to get close, you need macro lens. But macro lens not only allows you to go close, but it allows you to magnify the subject. It gives you extreme magnification, which you don't need for food photography. In fact, I would highly recommend that you start with your kit lens. If you have the 14-42 of your Olympus, or if you have the Pro lens, the 12-40 f2.8 Pro, these are fantastic lenses for food photography. You have the wide end 12mm or 14mm to do a flat lay overview of the food. You can capture everything on the table, or you can zoom into 40-42, focus on specific part of the plate, and you can have that background blur, or you can have some compression in the background. And these lenses allows you to go really close as well. I don't think there is a need for 60mm. If you want to do a little bit more serious, then I will suggest that you go for 40-150, the longer end, and you shoot from a distance, and you have some wireless flash setup or LED light. That will be professional food photography. I'm not going to go there for now, but seriously, you don't need the 60mm macro or any macro lenses for food photography. Mistake number three, using only ultra-wide angle for landscape photography. I understand when people think about wide-angle lens or ultra-wide angle, they associate it with landscape photography. You want to fit as much as possible within a frame. You're looking at the sweeping panorama shot. You want that breathtaking scenery. I understand ultra-wide angle is pretty much the standard lens for this environment. There are many situations where I actually used longer lenses for my landscape photography. I used the Olympus 45 f1.8, which is a medium telephoto lens, and sometimes I use a 75 f1.8 to get some landscape shots. And these are shooting things that's further away, and you can just specifically focus on that one part of the frame. A very good example was during my trip to Japan, both in Hokkaido and in Tokyo. I had a high vantage point, and I used the long lens to zoom into certain parts of the mountain. It just looks so much more dramatic than if I were to use an ultra-wide angle lens, and those mountains and the buildings appear too far away and too small in my composition. Trust me, don't just use ultra-wide angle for all your landscape shots. Sometimes do think a little bit outside the box and carry along some telephoto lenses. Who knows, it will give you a little bit more variety to work with. Mistake number 4 is that Micro Four Thirds system produce poor bokeh. There are two problems here. Number 1, let's define what bokeh is. Bokeh simply refers to the quality of the out of focus area in the photograph. Now, if you look at the back of me, is obviously blur, right? So if the bokeh is good, it means that this blur behind me will look really pleasing, really smooth, and buttery. It will not look distracting, it will not look nervous, it will look really, really beautiful. That's good bokeh. If it's a poor bokeh, then you have a lot of messy background, it looks really distracting, it looks really bad, it looks very harsh, and it takes away from the purpose of isolating the main subject. A lot of people misunderstood what bokeh is. They simply equate it to the amount of blur. There is no such thing as more or less bokeh. Bokeh is just the quality of the blur. It is whether the blur is nice or not. Now, half of the people will think that, oh, Olympus has poor bokeh, and that's wrong, because a lot of Olympus lenses, like the one I'm using now to film myself, the 45 f1.8, can produce excellent bokeh. The out of focus area in my background, the bokeh looks simply delicious. And I wasn't even using the 45 f1.2 Pro or the 75 f1.8. They can produce even more beautiful bokeh. Now, the second problem with bokeh is that, yes, some people misunderstood it for the amount of blur, and they simply think that Micro Four Thirds cannot produce shallow depth of field. That is so wrong. I have so many situations where I have to stop down and not shoot wide open. I have the Olympus 45 f1.8, 25 f1.2 Pro, and 75 f1.8. All these lenses can render really shallow depth of field, and sometimes to shoot portraits or to shoot products, I have to stop down to f2.8, sometimes f4 to achieve sufficient depth of field. I don't know, some people get some kind of kink or some kind of orgasm when they see the more blur they can get in a photograph. If you are that kind of person, you want as much shallow depth of field as possible, you want that super blurry look, then of course, don't get Micro Four Thirds. There's plenty of other systems to go to. You can go full frame, and that can satisfy your fetish. But trust me, as much blur as you can get is not the only way to achieve good photography. Good photography is not about shallow depth of field. Shallow depth of field is just one tool to achieve good photography. There's plenty more you can do to make an impactful photograph. And to say that Micro Four Thirds cannot achieve shallow depth of field is simply wrong. That's all I have to share about the common mistakes and misunderstandings that beginners do when it comes to photography lenses. In summary, telephoto lenses are not macro lenses. You don't have to use macro lens for food photography. Don't just use ultra wide angle lens for landscape photography. You can consider something longer like 45, 75 or a telephoto lens. And of course, Micro Four Thirds system can produce excellent bokeh. I hope this sharing clears up some confusion that some of you may have when it comes to photography lenses. And if you have more to add, especially if there's any other common misunderstandings or misconceptions, please share with me, leave them in the comments below. Maybe it will benefit some other people as well. If you found my sharing helpful to you, please consider buying me a cup of coffee, or you can contribute directly to my PayPal. Links in the description below on how you can do that. Any small contribution goes a long way. It will definitely help me to continue making videos like this and publish them right here. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, please go out and take more photographs. Bye-bye.